Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take the information you're curious about and explore it thoroughly so you don't have to get lost in the details.
Sounds good.
Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating collection, the esoteric writings of T. Subba. He was a very prominent figure in occultism from southern India and a fellow of the Theosophical Society.
That's right. And the sources we have are mainly his articles, aren't they? Mostly from the Theosophist magazine.
Yeah.
And what makes this collection, I think, particularly interesting is how Subba dives into some pretty intricate occult topics. Plus, he often directly responds to other writers.
Right, so you get that back and forth.
Exactly. You see a real intellectual debate happening within these pages. It's quite revealing.
Exactly. So think of this as your kind of fast track to grasping some genuinely complex theosophical ideas, understanding the debates around them, and seeing the connections to ancient Indian philosophy. Our goal is really to bring you those aha moments without you ever feeling like you're in over your head. Okay, so let's unpack this. Who exactly was this T. Subba?
Well, T. Subba was, as you said, a highly respected occultist in southern India. He held a significant position as a fellow of the Theosophical Society.
Okay.
And our sources, like the sketch of his life and the preface here, they tell us he was in correspondence with H.P. Blavatsky and Damodar.
The founders.
The key founders, yes. And this started way back in 1882. So right from pretty early on, he was deeply connected to the heart of the movement.
So he wasn't just sort of casually involved then?
Oh, not at all. He was a consistent reader of the Theosophist. He even subscribed to HPB's own magazine, Lucifer, which really underscores his ongoing serious interest in their evolving ideas. And here's something that caught my eye.
Yeah.
There's this anecdote about Sir Timothy Rao. He was Subba's superior in his professional life,
right?
And apparently, Sir Mahavira had absolutely no idea about Subba's profound mystical knowledge.
Really? So he kept it quite separate?
It suggests a real depth to his understanding, doesn't it? Something he kept largely, hidden, perhaps.
Almost like he was leading a kind of double life of intellectual pursuit. Okay, so we have this highly regarded figure, deeply immersed in occult thought. Now, one of the first topics he explores in this collection is the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Right.
Now, most of us have some basic idea of astrology, maybe, but Subba seems to be taking this into a completely different realm.
He certainly is. His perspective is that the zodiac signs operate on multiple levels of meaning. He proposes that from one really crucial standpoint, they actually represent distinct stages in the entire process of creation.
Creation itself.
Yes, ultimately leading to the material universe we experience, complete with its 5 fundamental elements. So a key insight here is understanding the zodiac as this symbolic blueprint of the universe's genesis. It goes way beyond simple horoscopic predictions.
So it's not just about whether you're compatible with a Gemini or something.
Precisely. Not at all. He makes the point that ancient Indian sastras, or sacred texts, they frequently used Sanskrit words with meanings that were intentionally veiled. Hidden, you might say.
Oh, so?
Well, these relied on sort of established methods and unspoken agreements, tacit conventions. The obvious literal meaning could be quite different from the intended deeper significance.
Okay.
He even gives the example of Capricornus, noting that ancient Western astronomers never actually called it crocodile, which highlights these potential variations in interpretation across different ancient traditions, doesn't it?
That's a really interesting point about how meaning can be encoded in language like that. He then moves into the numerical representations of some signs, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Let's take Tula, which is Libra.
Okay.
According to Subba, in its numerical form, it equates to 36. And he connects this directly to the 36 tatwams, or principles, as understood by the Sakteya school of thought.
Tatwams, like fundamental building blocks.
Kind of. Think of them as principles of reality, maybe like elements in chemistry, but, on a more esoteric level.
Got it.
Then we have Vrishika, Scorpio. He equates this with Vishnu, the expanded meaning the universe itself, Viswam.
The universe.
Right. And he links this to the Swapnavasta, literally the dream state.
Dream state.
Representing the universe in its conceptual or, let's say, ideational phase. And he points out its position opposite Rishabham, Taurus, which symbolizes Pranava.
Pranava, the primordial sound, like Om.
Exactly, the primordial sound or vibration from which the universe is said to have originated.
And these numbers aren't just randomly assigned, are they?
No, not at all. Take Kumbham, Aquarius. When represented numerically, it becomes 14.
14.
And he directly links this to the Chaturdasa Bhuvanam, the 14 lokas, or planes of existence described in Sanskrit texts.
Locus. Different planes, not physical places.
More like different states of being or consciousness as described in these ancient texts.
Yes.
Even Meenam, Pisces, has a numerical representation in this system, although the specific number isn't detailed right here.
This is really revealing a whole new dimension to something I thought I kind of understood. He then starts connecting these numerical representations to a wider range of esoteric ideas.
Exactly. He draws connections between these zodiacal interpretations and, well, a whole spectrum of esoteric concepts. Things like Adam Kadmon, the sacred tetragram, the 5 Buddhas representing the Jivatma, the individual soul, the astral light, those 36 tatwams again, which he says are born of avidya or ignorance.
Right.
He even links it to the universe in thought, that's swapna avastha, seen subjectively, the 9 Prajapatis who are like assistants to the creator, and the mind's conception of the material universe.
Wow.
What this really highlights is the interconnectedness he's proposing. The zodiac isn't just about stars, it's a symbolic key, you might say, to unlocking the entire cosmic structure and the principles governing it.
Okay, so from this really cosmic perspective, he then zooms in on the individual with the Aryan Arhat esoteric tenets on the sevenfold principle in man. This sounds like a deep dive into our very composition.
It is. He introduces this concept of the sevenfold principle that constitutes a human being. Then he makes a comparison between this Aryan philosophical viewpoint and the classifications presented in something called fragments of occult truth.
Okay, so comparing different views.
Right. And a key aspect here is the difference in terminology. For instance, what the fragments might call physical intelligence, the Aryan philosophy, according to Subba, sees as the entity where the mind resides, linking it to the interplay of Brahma, the absolute reality, and Prakriti, primordial matter. He also mentions their philosophy generally applies the term Jivatma to the seventh, the highest principle, when distinguishing it from Paramatma or Parabrahma.
The supreme soul or absolute.
Exactly. The core takeaway is that even within this esoteric thought, the structure of human existence is viewed through diverse interpretations and frameworks.
So different schools, different maps of the human being, essentially?
Precisely. He also touches on the role of Sakti power or force in carrying the impressions of our subjective experiences.
Impressions like?
Sensations, ideas, thoughts. He uses a really insightful analogy here, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Comparing it to how electric or magnetic currents can mysteriously transmit sound or speech. It suggests our experiences leave a kind of imprint on this energetic aspect of our being.
That makes a lot of sense, visualized like that. He also brings up a discussion about Akasa and Sakti, doesn't he?
Yes. There's a question raised. Is Sakti a distinct principle itself? Or perhaps an inherent attribute, a quality of Akasa?
Akasa being the primordial substance or ether.
That's often how it's understood, yes. Subba suggests that, from their Aryan perspective, Akasa on its own doesn't inherently possess any Sakti.
Implying
that Sakti is more of a function or maybe a manifestation of Akasa rather than a completely separate entity, a subtle but important distinction.
Okay. Moving on, he tackles esoteric spiritualism and the fate after death. Now, this was a huge topic back then, late 19th century. Seances, spirit communication, what's his perspective?
He addresses what happens to the different parts of a person after death from this esoteric viewpoint. He outlines 3 general scenarios, basically.
Right, sure.
Individuals with strong spiritual leanings, those with maybe secondary spiritual aspirations, and then those with no real spiritual focus in life.
Right.
But what's really crucial here is the assertion that, according to these esoteric views, the actual spirits, the spiritual egos of deceased individuals are not believed to appear in seance rooms.
Really? So if people aren't contacting the actual spirits of the departed in these seances, then what or who do they think they're encountering?
Well, he doesn't go into huge detail about that in this specific piece, but he does mention a term used in India, pisasham, to describe certain types of entities.
Pisasham.
Yes, and he notes his own avoidance of investigating this area. He calls it disgusting, profitless, and dangerous.
Strong words.
His main point is that the true spiritual essence of a person doesn't get involved in these practices, and those who pursue it are potentially opening themselves up to negative influences or, well, self-deception.
That's a pretty firm stance against the spiritualist movement of the time. Okay, he then transitions to a critique of Mr. Oxley's views on sacred writings and Busiris. This sounds like a direct intellectual confrontation.
It is indeed. Mr. Oxley had written a book trying to give a philosophical basis to spiritualistic ideas, and he offered interpretations on the origins of sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita.
Great.
The central point of disagreement comes down to Subba's view of Vyasa.
The traditional author of the Mahabharata.
Exactly. Subba argues that Vyasa, being an adept and a Mahatma, a great soul, highly spiritually advanced, it's fundamentally incompatible with him later becoming an angel or deva.
Which is what Oxley claimed, or rather his source.
Yes. Claimed by this figure referred to as Busiris, communicating through Mr. Oxley's work. So it really sounds like a clash of fundamental philosophical frameworks, not just arguing about historical details.
So Oxley's source, this Busiris, claimed to be the original author of the Mahabharata and to have lived thousands of years ago.
Exactly that. Busiris, supposedly speaking through Oxley, asserted authorship of the Mahabharata, placing his existence some 5,000 years in the past, even predating the current Indian caste system, apparently. Wow. Subba strongly challenges this. He argues that within Hindu thought, the status of an adept or Mahatma is qualitatively different from an angel or deva. It just doesn't compute, in his view.
Okay.
He also questions the validity of the internal evidence Oxley presents, suggesting it's based on misinterpretations of Sanskrit terms. And frankly, he casts doubt on the reliability of Busiris's pronouncements, especially being made in England.
And Subba brings in the theosophical understanding to bolster his argument here.
Yes, he does. He mentions that theosophists generally hold the belief that the spirit proper of individuals who have been truly wicked, well, it undergoes a final dissolution or departure at death.
Annihilation.
Something like that, a final departure. And this directly contradicts Mr. Oxley's idea of a universal ultimate immortality for everyone, regardless of their actions.
Right.
This really underscores a fundamental split in their understanding of the afterlife and spiritual evolution.
Okay. The next topic is the nature of the logos and different classifications of principles. The logos. That's a concept that pops up in various systems, isn't it? What's Subba's take?
He touches upon the logos, yes. He proposes that Krishna, the central figure in the Gita, might represent a specific form or manifestation of it.
A manifestation of the logos.
Right. And he connects the logos to the seventh principle in the human constitution, the highest spiritual aspect.
Oh.
Interestingly, he also mentions that within Brahminical occultism, there are different ways of classifying these principles.
Oh, not just the sevenfold system.
Not just the sevenfold one that was more commonly presented in theosophical circles, there was also a fourfold one. And Subba asserts the existence of a real sevenfold classification that actually differs from the one being circulated.
Suggesting deeper layers.
Exactly. Hinting at perhaps more esoteric understandings within the tradition. He also mentions 9 different perspectives or standpoints from which the microcosm of the individual can be viewed.
9.
Which leads to these various ways of categorizing its components, almost like a single beam of light refracting into different colors depending on the prism.
That's a good analogy. Okay, from these quite abstract philosophical concepts, he then moves to something more grounded, geographically at least, pilgrimage places in India. He doesn't just see these as spots on a map, does he?
Absolutely not. His view is that these sacred cities aren't simply locations, but they possess a profound, well-organized and powerful spiritual force.
A spiritual force inherent in the place.
That's the idea. He gives specific examples, Benares, which he interprets symbolically as representing the Anahata chakra.
The heart chakra.
Yes, in yogic philosophy. Then Chidambaram, with its unique delta formation symbolizing occult secrets. And Frisalam, Ramanal, Jagannath, Allahabad, each holding a distinct mystic significance, deeply rooted in Hindu tradition.
And he even delves into the symbolism of death in Benares. That's quite specific.
Yes, he explains the idea of death in Benares as the concentration of prajna, or consciousness, back into the original germ consciousness, which he identifies as the true individuality of a person. He also briefly notes the relationship between Sahasram, the crown chakra, as the positive pole, and Muladhara, the root chakra, as the negative pole in this kind of spiritual geography.
Fascinating. He then discusses the Egyptian deities Isis and Osiris. Why bring them into a discussion focused on Indian esoteric thought? Seems a bit of a jump.
Well, he introduces them by stating that they weren't just allegorical figures. He believed they were actual historical human incarnations.
Real people.
Yes. Who played a vital role in teaching humanity occult science and the secrets of initiation. He draws a contrast between the macrocosmic cosmic virgin and the microcosmic virgin, offering a different interpretation compared to some other views, like those about Persephone.
And there's an element of alchemical symbolism connected to them as well, like with mercury and sulfur.
Yes, he touches upon that.
Yeah.
The alchemical significance associated with Isis and Osiris. He links them to concepts like mercury, which he equates with Sivavirium, the essence of God, essentially.
Okay.
Sulfur, representing the intellectual flame, and a mysterious salt, known as Azoth, the beginning of consciousness.
So it suggests a kind of universal esoteric language underlying different traditions.
I think that's a fair interpretation. He also mentions the creation of humanity before the fall, with the spiritual monad evolved by God, and the astral body formed by subordinate powers.
Right. Okay, next up, he addresses the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna's dilemma, a foundational text. What's his particular angle on it?
He really emphasizes the crucial importance of understanding the Gita within its context.
The context of the Mahabharata epic.
Exactly. Recognizing the specific situation, the challenges Arjuna faced, and the guidance Krishna offered in that situation. He highlights that the Gita's central moral teaching focuses on the mental attitude.
The attitude of the person doing the action.
Yes, rather than the inherent nature of the act itself. What matters is the why and the how in your mind. He also underscores Krishna's instruction to Arjuna. Worship your own highest spirit, the Atma.
As the path to salvation.
As the correct path, yes. Drawing a parallel to how the Logos guides the human monad during initiation.
Then there's Sensa, an occult romance. This sounds like a narrative, but with a deeper symbolic meaning, I gather.
It is. Subba presents Sensa as an allegorical occult romance. It illustrates the journey of spiritual development.
Okay.
The characters are highly symbolic. Sensa is the spiritual aspirant. A little girl symbolizes the awakening mind, the first sensations. A grown-up girl represents the pull of strong emotions. A dark goddess embodies human passion. And the Lady of the White Lotus, well, she serves as his guardian angel.
So what's the basic story? What happens to Sensa?
The narrative follows Sensa's descent into the allure of material pleasures. He gets drawn in. He's nearly absorbed, almost destroyed by the dark goddess of passion.
Right.
But he's eventually rescued through the intervention of the Lady of the White Lotus. This salvation ultimately leads him to revolt against a corrupt priesthood.
And this is all an allegory for?
Subba explicitly connects it to the real nature of what he terms soul death and the ultimate fate of a black magician. So the story holds these profound lessons about the dangers and the potential triumphs on the spiritual path.
Intense stuff. The discussion then seems to circle back to the septenary principle debate continued. This must have been a really significant point of disagreement at the time.
It clearly was. He revisits these differing perspectives on the sevenfold constitution of humanity. He specifically highlights the ongoing debate between himself and Madame Blavatsky.
Referencing their articles.
Yes, referencing their respective articles in the Theosophist and also this compilation, 5 Years of Theosophy. He points out discrepancies in the classifications being presented.
Such as?
Particularly concerning the position and nature of prana, the life force, and also the understanding of the fifth and sixth principles, manas and buddhi, mind and spiritual soul.
So the details of the system.
Exactly. Subba makes it clear his primary concern wasn't about questioning the supposed Himalayan origin of the teachings.
Which Blavatsky emphasized.
Which was often emphasized, yes. His issue was more about ensuring the accuracy and clarity of the classification system itself. Getting the map right, so to speak.
And he revisits Parabrahm and the Logos as well. These seem like foundational concepts for him.
They do. He briefly discusses Parabrahm, the absolute reality in Vedantic philosophy, and its relationship to the Logos, the divine principle of order and creation. He mentions the idea of multiple logo, these divine emanations, and the process by which the one light differentiates into individual monads.
Monads. Sparks of divinity.
Essentially, yes. He also notes the description of Mahavishnu as a representative of the Logos, a Pian Chohan.
A celestial being.
A type of celestial being, yes, who appeared right at the beginning of human evolution on this planet, according to this view.
Okay. Finally, he touches upon esoteric Buddhism, specifically A.P. Sinnott's book and the reactions it caused.
Right. He clarifies that the term Buddhism in this context, in Sinnott's title, isn't really referring to the specific religion founded by Gautama Buddha.
But more too.
More to the universal secret wisdom, Bodha, or spiritual enlightenment, that theoretically underlies all true spiritual teachings. He mentions the defenses made of Sinnott's work.
Against criticisms.
Yes. Suggesting that any apparently contradictory statements might have been for explanatory purposes or maybe just due to an incomplete understanding of these profound concepts when it was written.
Understandable, given the subject matter.
And he concludes by emphasizing the concept of parabrahma, pervading all cosmic matter mula prakriti and possessing inherent motion. This motion then manifests as energy, fohat, the basis of all life.
Wow. That was an incredibly thorough exploration into a deeply intricate and fascinating collection of esoteric writings by T. Soboro.
It's dense material.
It really is. We've covered so much ground, haven't we? From the multiple layers of meaning in the zodiac, the complex sevenfold nature of humanity,
Right, the afterlife debates.
the afterlife, his critiques of spiritualism, the symbolic significance of myths and sacred places, and even those internal intellectual debates that shaped the early theosophical movement.
Absolutely. Listeners should now have a much richer understanding, hopefully, of these complex ideas and the historical context, the discussions happening within the Theosophical Society back then.
Definitely. So as you, the listener, consider these diverse perspectives on the fundamental nature of humanity, the fabric of reality presented in Soboro's writings, maybe ask yourself, what aspects resonate most deeply with your own understanding of existence and consciousness?
That's a good question to ponder.
It's certainly a lot to contemplate.
And we really encourage you to delve further. Look into the writings of T. Subba. Explore the history of the Theosophical Society, if this sparked your interest.
Yeah.
There's a huge wealth of knowledge out there to explore, and your journey into these fascinating subjects has really only just begun.